The selling point to the Dillon RL550B for this video is the hard mounted powder measure reservoir. And why is that a selling point? First of all, this is purely my viewpoint on this, but the reason this was a selling point to me is because you haven't lived until you're rocking and rolling on your progressive loader and you lose your powder reservoir off onto the floor and you lose every bit of your powder. So let's talk about this. Now, this is how I see this, okay? When you are talking about a progressive loader, you kind of have to think about where that powder measure reservoir is positioned into where your vibrations are going to end. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, think of a car antenna. You tap on the bottom of that antenna and guess what? The higher up the antenna you watch, the greater movement you're going to have. Am I correct? Well, if you look over at this Redding standalone powder measure, if I were to take this tape measure and take it to the base of the tool it's mounted on and run it up to the edge of the powder measure body, I would get roughly 10 3/4 inches, right? But when I come over here to this Dillon and I run my tape measure from the base of that jam nut all the way up to the edge of the powder measure body, I get roughly 21 5/8 inches. That's pretty much double what that standalone powder measure is. So now if you think about it, every time you pull the handle on this machine, the vibration is going to be amplified up through your powder reservoir. Well, think about it. When it's empty like this, it's no big deal, but now you fill it with mass, your powder, and then you add this to it. So you take a cartridge case, you're going to resize it, you grab the handle and you get that to it. Now imagine it's full of powder. Imagine you have all 4 stations loaded, and now you've amplified that movement even more. So what happens, and it happened to me, is if you don't have a way of anchoring your plastic powder reservoir to where it's not going to budge, chances are you're going to lose it. And chances are you're going to lose, probably $13 worth of powder on the floor. Now, if you were to ask me at the point that that happened, do you really think the cost of the Dillon was really that much more? I would have said, I'll take the Dillon. Okay? So now one thing I will point out. Inside this powder reservoir, you're going to see we have a baffle. It's set up that way from Dillon. Now, I couldn't tell you if that is a removable baffle, and I'll tell you why. These screws that are set into this powder measure reservoir, initially through setting it up this way at the factory, those threads are as tight as they can be, so I know those screws are set in there good. So I don't plan on taking this hopper off unless for some reason I have to. Those screws are staying. So as far as I'm concerned, the baffle is where it's at, right? So one thing I'll point out, when you look over here at this standalone powder measure, Redding, they utilize the anchor screws to maintain that powder measure. That's the way I like to see it. When we come over here, you look at the size of these screws Dillon is using. I haven't spoke to Dillon about this, but I would have an idea that they understand the amount of vibration you're coming up here hitting this mass. And so for me, just my opinion, these screws, they're a big deal. They're a big deal. It's such a big deal that without these screws for a progressive loader, that's a walkaway deal for me. I wouldn't even consider it. And you know, just no conversation about it for me, because once you lose your powder on the floor one time, it sours you. It just does. So if I was in the market and I was new to this, that would be a huge consideration for me. So guys and gals, that's the end of this video. God bless. We'll see you on the next.